how their workplace is going to be governed. You know, unionization is supposed to be about the workers having a voice, but this act in itself is cutting off their ability to learn about the issues. So, you know, again, point two, John touched on this a little bit as well. The other aspect of the Employee Free Choice Act is that it requires mandatory arbitration, which essentially is after 120 days, an arbitrator comes in, and if you haven't agreed to a contract, he or she just decides what the terms of the agreement are going to be, even though that arbitrator has little to no experience in your industry and certainly little to no experience with your individual employees or your business. So they come in and they impose a contract. So on top of it, we're sacrificing the right to contract and the right of two groups to come to an agreement. And by the way, the employees who generally get to vote on a contract before it's ratified, under mandatory arbitration, they don't get a vote on that contract. It's forced on them for 2 years. And the arbitrator, who may have a occupational interest in this, and we've seen this in the public sector where mandatory arbitration is common, can actually impose mandatory arbitration for future contracts. So negotiations could never happen. And it becomes this narcotic effect where neither group actually gets to make the hard decisions and the give and take and the best outcomes that can come out from negotiations, and you have a third party imposing terms. If the arbitrator guesses wrong and runs the small company, large company out of business, government's not going to bail them out. That's it. It's done. All those people lose jobs. So there's some real questions there. Are we sacrificing the right to contract and what that means, again, for increased union density? I think just shifting real quick, and I know I'm running low on time here, when we look at some of the other things we talked about, particularly project labor agreements, they essentially, and we've talked about union density versus non-union density, they close out over 90% of the contractors, including most small and minority contractors, out of federal contracts. So by pushing project labor agreements, are we sacrificing the opportunity for small business to be the engine of job growth? And I think, again, when you look at that, whether you think increased union density is appropriate or you think on very large projects that project labor agreements may be the right to go, and as John pointed out, the big dig is certainly not a shining example of the things that have been advocated coming in on time and budget with respect to and high quality work with respect to what has been pushed for project labor agreements. So we need to look at that. And I think when you look at project labor agreements and to a lesser extent Davis-Bacon, which the wages aren't the issue with Davis-Bacon. I know everyone knows about Davis-Bacon wages. The trick with Davis-Bacon is the work rules. If your wage is based on a union work rule, after you've bid the project and everything, and by the way, though the Department of Labor publishes the work rules, the wages, they don't publish the work rules. So they're a mystery. But after the fact, after you bid the job, you've come in and completed the job, you can actually be sued for not following the union work rules, which you never had access to. And you can be caught in a situation where you might have had an electronic technician run the wires for the alarms and phones, which would make sense, and the union can come in and sue you and say, well, technically under our work rules, only electricians do that. And while you pay that electrical technician $30 an hour, you got to pay him $70 because that's electrician's work. So we've seen that as kind of a weapon that unions use under Davis-Bacon, and certainly Harry's made his points about Davis-Bacon in the past. To close out small minority contractors and entrepreneurs. So when you look at this list, we're sacrificing quite a bit at the altar of increased unionization. And the question for everyone here has to be, is this really worth it, even if you believe the rhetoric with respect to increased union density being some sort of solution? And I think what the administration and Congress need to recognize, small business wasn't part of the problem. And small business, which is the engine of job growth and creation, is certainly part of the solution. And when you're looking at policies they need to push forward, all of these need to be rethought. And that's all I got, Harry.
Thank you. Thank you, Josh. Next is our chairman.